So the latest book I read has been Oe Kenzaburo's A Personal Matter. This is a very, very short book, super, super tiny, 165 pages. He was the winner of the 1994 Nobel Prize for Literature, the second Japanese to be nominated for that prize. The first being Kawabata, who wrote Snow Country, which I read a few weeks ago. This one's a bit later than Snow Country. This was written in the late 1960s. It was published in 69 and has a totally different feel than that sort of book. This one borderlines on transgressive fiction, I would say. The sort of morals and ethics it presents in the book run contrary to a lot of what we would consider as right and normal. And I say we as in society, civilization. I think that even extends to Japan in 1969. It is very, very dark and deals with very rough topics and very difficult topics. If you are someone who has kids or has had children or has had issues having children, this will be such a triggering book. I wouldn't say I don't recommend it, because I very much do recommend it to anyone, but it can be very difficult. So I didn't have children, but I imagine if you are expecting, this would not be a good book to read. You would have nightmares. So the whole story revolves around this man, Bird. He's called Bird. I assume in the Japanese version, the original Japanese version, he's called Tori, which is Japanese for bird, which Tori sounds like a much nicer name than Bird. Anyway, so this guy Bird, and him and his wife have had a child. They just had a child, and this child has what they believe is a brain hernia, and it's described as the child seems to have two heads. The whole book is the main character Bird trying to grapple with how to deal with his first child having this impairment, disability, and like I said, very, very dark. And the author himself, Oe, did have a child similar to this, and so this, I wouldn't say is autobiographical, but I mean, it's called A Personal Matter. I imagine a lot of the feelings and thoughts represented in this book were felt and experienced by the author. So it is a very real book. So he has this child with a brain hernia, and at first the doctors are kind of laughing about it. They're like, "Oh, isn't this funny? Oh, the child's not going to live." They're very flippant about how the child won't survive, and it's just going to get weak and die. And they even suggest you wouldn't even want it to live, because it would just be a vegetable. They use the word vegetable. There will be nothing in this person's head, and so at first Bird is sort of shocked and horrified that how dare the doctors say that his child should die and will die, but he very quickly goes on side with them and sort of sees this child as sort of trapping him and becoming a burden to him. He describes it, I mean, it gets worse and worse as the book goes on, but he describes the child as a monster haunting him, or a demon child sort of chasing him down and preventing him from living his life, which I think is kind of not normal, but I think it is normal for new parents to sort of see having a child and as this huge change. And if it's not a child that's planned, or if you're not totally sure that you want a child, or even if you are, you can see having a child as this huge change in your life, and you might be considering all the negatives and all the things you can no longer do because of that. But this sort of takes it to an extreme where eventually he comes around to the fact that he does not want his son to live. He does not want this baby to survive. And so they take it to a specialist hospital, and they are going to operate on the brain and the head, but they're like, we'll wait a few days and see if the baby even survives and is strong enough to survive the surgery. And he convinces, or either the doctor convinces, anyways, the hospital eventually changes the baby's diet from milk to sugar water in sort of an attempt to weaken the baby so that it won't survive. So they're purposefully trying to kill this baby. And the father Bird is sort of okay with that. And he comes around to the fact that this is what he wants. So Bird has always wanted to go to Africa. That's his dream, is to go to Africa. And he sees this baby as very much, this will destroy all hope he ever has to travel to Africa. So he does want to sort of get rid of it in the end. So it's strange. I don't know if this is a cultural thing or of the time, but the baby's immediately taken away from the mother. The mother's not really a character in this book at all. The baby's taken away from the mother and sent to various hospitals, and the baby's condition is kept secret from the mother because they don't want to upset the mother. So Bird, his wife, he barely talks to her. The day after the baby is born, he goes back to work. So the day the baby is born, he goes and tells his father-in-law, his wife's father, that, you know, there's this issue with the baby, and the father gives him a bottle of whiskey. So he takes this whiskey, and he's known to be an alcoholic. He once spent 4 weeks drinking straight, day and night, drunk for 4 straight weeks. So he takes this whiskey to a friend of his, Himiko's, who he hasn't seen in a while, and they had a relationship. It turned out to be sort of a rape. I hate to say sort of a rape, because she describes it as a rape, but very flippantly. So I guess it was when he took her virginity when they were in college. But he goes to her house and starts drinking, and they sort of flirt about having a sexual relationship, but he's very much disgusted with the female body because of this baby that's come into the world. And he's disgusted with the womb, and he sort of hates all that. But he gets really drunk, and then the next day, the day after his baby's born, he goes to work, and he's a teacher at a cram school, and he vomits all over the place in the middle of the lecture and has to cancel school. One of the kids gets really upset about this and is like, we're paying you, and how dare you be this drunk and hungover. So he goes to the headmaster, the principal of the school, and essentially gets Bird fired. And like, again, the Bird's not going to the mother and talking to his wife. He's not going to see the baby. He's left the baby at this hospital and has gone back to his job. The rest of the book he spends with Himiko. He sort of moves in with her. He's traveling with her. He's they're having sex all the time. This book is heavily sexual. Lots of sex, lots of descriptions, lots of thoughts about sex. So he's sort of cheating on his wife, but like, the wife is not even a character. You see her once or twice. And he's sitting by the phone waiting to hear from the hospital whether the baby died or not. And he's sort of assuming and hoping the baby will die. So days pass, and again, he doesn't go see his wife. He goes sees his wife once and says like, oh, the baby there's an organ issue and the doctors are looking after it. And then he leaves his wife, who's still in the hospital. So he's staying with Himiko. Himiko is like described as someone who is very sexually promiscuous and inexperienced. Her husband had committed suicide, hung himself in the room, and Bird had come and took the corpse down with her. But they form a very intimate relationship and have tons of sex all the time. Eventually, they get the phone call, and the hospital says, "Hey, the baby's doing fine. We're gonna get ready to do the surgery." So he shows up at the hospital, and like, this whole time he's been hoping the baby dies. And it's hard to say, like, not because he's an evil person, but again, like I said, this is very transgressive. It goes very much against what we would consider right and proper. But he does see this baby as not as an individual, not as a human being, but as a vegetable, as a thing that's going to get in the way of his life. And like, what kind of life can this baby lead if it has this major brain damage? It's a very hard book. So he goes to the hospital, and he's sort of upset. So he says he's going to take the baby. And they're like, what, you're not going to go with the surgery? He's like, no, I'm taking the baby. We're leaving. So he takes the baby and goes back with Himiko. And she says, hey, I had an abortion with this doctor. He kind of runs a shady clinic. We'll take the baby to him, and he can do something to cause the baby to die. And at this point, they're straight up talking about murdering the baby, using language like murdering, and dirtying their own hands with the death of this baby. And so they try to get to this clinic, and the baby develops pneumonia because of the rain as they're getting to this clinic. And they finally get there and leave the baby with this man, this doctor. And Himiko and Bird then go to this gay bar that Himiko knows of, and that's run by this person from Bird's past. and they chat, and Bird realizes that he's changed since in the past 7 years or whatever, since he last knew this boy who's running the gay bar. And because it's written in 1969, a lot of the language and sort of writing about the gay people is quite outdated, and not necessarily offensive or homophobic, but if this was written today, they would definitely have written it differently. And it's at this point that he finally says, like, I've been running since this baby was born. I need to stop running. I'm going to go get the baby, take it back to the hospital, and give it the surgery. And Himiko's like, what? Because she had made a plan that they'll kill the baby and she'll sell her house and they can go to Africa with Bird and Himiko could go to Africa together, because Bird's always wanted to go to Africa. That's his whole thing. He just loves Africa, and Himiko sort of caught that fever and really wants to go to Africa too. So they were going to live happily ever after in Africa, but Bird finally decides no, he's going to get the baby. So he gets the baby, brings it to the hospital, and then at the very end, it's sort of a jump forward where he's finally with his wife and they have the baby, and he says, like, oh, it wasn't actually a brain hernia. It was just a sort of a cyst on the side of the head, and they managed to fix it. And the baby's going to be fine, except it could have very, very low IQ and learning disabilities. So yeah, so that's how it ends, with comments by his father-in-law that Bird is not the man he used to be. He's changed, he's matured, he's finally grown. And so this nickname Bird that he's had since he was a kid might have to go. Yeah, so brilliantly written book. Like I said, it deals with some really heavy topics that I don't know that a lot of writers would try and tackle. And I think he only can do this because he lived through a similar situation, and sort of had these thoughts, these horrible, horrible thoughts that are the sort of thing that in polite company in society you should probably keep to yourself if you're feeling that you don't want a child and that will get in your way and it's better off dead. Like, very, very hard, but I'm glad I read it, even though I don't have children. Yeah, so that was A Personal Matter by Oe Kenzaburo.